Well, we can now move this conversation on and speak with transgender teacher and the journalist Debbie Hayton. Debbie, a pleasure to have your company and an historic day. What's your take on it?
Well, it's a very welcome day, Martin. For too long, we've been dealing with uncertainty and confusion over all these matters. It's led to all sorts of problems. It's been good for nobody. So I welcome this decision. I applaud for Women Scotland's hard work over many years, and hopefully now we can move on with confidence in more certainty of where everybody stands.
And Debbie written an excellent piece in The Spectator today saying the legal definition of woman has restored sanity to the law.
Well, it has done, because when the law was unclear, nobody knew what a woman was. Was it somebody who'd been through a process of gender reassignment, or was it anybody who just ticked a box to say, I identify as a woman? We ended up with a mess, we ended up with confusion, and we ended up with a deeply unsatisfactory situation for everybody, not least of which people who have transitioned, who are just trying to live their lives in society.
And Debbie, it's become a very, very toxic debate, both for women and for trans people themselves and the broader population. And today, the Labour for Trans Rights group issued this statement. They said the Supreme Court's decision is hugely disappointing and a result of ceaseless lobbying from a well-funded anti-trans network with links to the global far right. Debbie Hayton, you've never struck me as someone from the far right.
No, I'm not. I'm a trade unionist and I've been a member of the Labour Party for a long time. But I take issue with what that group said. It's just not right. There are two different protected characteristics. There is sex and there is gender reassignment. And society can protect both. And what we've tried to do is fudge the issue and try to protect both in the same context, in the same way. And it hasn't worked for anybody.
Do you think today's ruling will be a full point, or do you think yet there may be more battles to be fought? The trans lobby group, I don't suspect, will take this lying down. They're already come out with fighting talk. Do you expect that this could be challenged? Will there be challenges made to try and ensure that access to women-only spaces, for example, is perpetrated?
Well, the issue, as I said in The Spectator, is there are still loose ends to be tidied up here. The judgment this morning talked about Section 9 of the Gender Recognition Act, which changed somebody's legal sex for all purposes, as it said, and that was thrown out. But there's also Section 22 of the Gender Recognition Act, which protects, which draws a veil of secrecy over that change. So you can change your legal sex, your birth certificate is changed, all your documents change. A service provider at the moment has very little way of proving whether somebody is a trans woman or a woman. If a trans woman with a GRC declares that they are a woman, there is no way of proving that. And that's something that the law still needs to look into so that confidence is restored in the system.
And Debbie, may I ask you for your take on the political positioning on this? Because there's been a lot of shape-shifting, hasn't there, from political leaders? They seem to have changed their mind with the weather because they've been so confused. Or have they been pandering to the gallery? Have they been saying what they think is the correct thing to say, but actually now is legally not correct and biologically perhaps never was? How convinced are you that the political class have got a grip on this issue?
Well, for too long, we've had politicians who have been led by the people that are supposed to be following them. I think it was it Jim Hacker on Yes Minister that said, I'm their leader, I must follow them. And I just think that sums up a lot of our politicians in this generation as well, where rather than take a lead on the matter, they've been bullied and pushed around by lobby groups.
OK, well, that perhaps might be drawing to a conclusion with today's historic ruling. Thank you very much for joining us. Always a pleasure to have your company, Debbie Hayton, transgender teacher and journalist. Now, for the alternative viewpoint, let's now speak with the founder of GenderGP, Helen Webberley. Helen, welcome back to the show. What's your take on today's ruling? I suspect you're not quite as happy there as my previous guest.
I think what I'm not happy about is that the Equality Act was written poorly, and we've been trying to protect sex, and we've also been trying to protect gender. What does sex mean? What does gender mean? It's very difficult, and that's been the difficulty. But actually, all that the law today, the court was asked was, what does the Equality Act mean? And the literal interpretation of the Equality Act is that woman is biological sex. Now, they haven't said what biological sex is, and you know what I'm going to say, because, not all is biological sex XX chromosomes, because not all women have XX chromosomes, and is biological sex body parts, because we know that not all women have a cervix, vagina, ovaries, just as you were mentioning before. So this is not to be interpreted in any shape or form that a trans woman is not a woman, and the court themselves said that. We counsel against. Yes, they did.
The court ruling today was that a trans woman isn't a woman.
Well, if you just want to rewind what I just said to you and explain to you clearly, what the Supreme Court was explaining was the literal interpretation of the Equality Act is that woman is biological. They were not at all saying that a trans woman is not a woman. And I think that's really important for all those trans women out there that may be finding it difficult to interpret the news, interpret the law. It's difficult, it's challenging, but trans women are most definitely women. And actually, if you read the ruling,
law disagrees with you, and so does biology. Can I ask you seriously, Helen, if legally your position isn't recognised and biologically it isn't, then what supports your position? Is it pure ideology?
So the ruling makes 38 references to trans woman. So why would they use that terminology if a trans woman wasn't a woman? What would
address the issue at hand? That's the standard part of a legal issue.
A trans woman is a woman, and if you read the ruling closely, it actually points out that trans women can claim sex discrimination because she's perceived to be a woman. So this does not give people the automatic right to start banning trans women from female spaces unless there is an absolute reason. And the two reasons that people have put forward to me that I can identify with are, for example, rape crisis centres, where the women in there may feel particularly at threat of other people in that. And then they've talked about lesbian groups, of course, understanding that you can have lesbian trans women. So we've got to be really careful.
I had the director of Scottish Lesbians in earlier on, who said actually lesbians have been some of the most put upon people in all this debate because men were given legal rights to go into lesbian spaces, which no lesbian wants. Can I talk to you about...
I don't think I've ever met a man who wants to go into a lesbian space, to be fair.
Well, I don't want to get into that. Can I get back onto a serious point about children and hormones, puberty blockers, something which you advocated for yourself? Today, the ruling said biological sex is the definition of sex, chromosomal sex. Where does that leave people like yourself who advocate for giving puberty blockers to children? If the law says you can't change sex, where does that leave the process of giving...
The law does not say that you can't change sex, and the ruling did not say that
acknowledges
women are not
biological
women.
sex as supreme. That's what the law said today.
Well, that's your interpretation of it. What the law said today was that the Equality Act definition is biological woman, and they do not define what biological woman is. That question has to be answered, because there's going to be some other pretty upset people out there who haven't got the genitalia and body parts that I just talked about, or the chromosomes that I talked about, and they're going to be going, well, what about us? We are women too. And I think the biggest point in all of this is that we do not discriminate against minority groups.
I think everybody can agree that everybody should be allowed to live a peaceful and prosperous life. And by the way, that includes a lot of women who don't want men in their space. I digress. I want to get back to that point, though. If the law today says that sex is biological, it's not a mindset, it's a factual biological thing, where does that leave administering gender-changing treatments and hormones to children? I mean, surely now it's time to stop that.
The law recognises gender reassignment is a thing. That means transgender people exist. That means transgender children exist. That means people undergo gender reassignment, which is transitioning. And there are medicines that help people to undergo transition. And medicine should be available to everybody freely, regardless of age or gender or sex or ability, etc.
Helen, do you believe that a young man presenting to you, a boy, can become a woman? And do you help them to achieve that?
Well, I'm sorry that you don't understand gender reassignment, but a boy doesn't become a woman. That's no boy becomes a woman. That's not how it works. Your gender identity is set in stone in your body from way before you were born.
But your biology is also set. That's what today's law said. I'm trying to get from you, can a biological boy, a man, come to you and become a biological woman? Yes or no?
You misunderstand biology. So the people aren't saying that you can. If you're going to define sex as biology, you're asking me, can you turn XY into XX? And you most definitely can't. Does XY always equal female? Definitely not. Can you change body parts to better fit somebody's gender identity? Yes, you absolutely can.
Okay, thank you very much for your opinion today. Balanced take on things. That's the founder of GenderGP, Helen Webberley. Thank you very, very much.